We'll be looking a lot into 1 Samuel today. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 6 through 13, it says, "When they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, 'Surely this is the Lord's anointed.' But the Lord said to Samuel, 'Don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him.' The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse told his son Abinadab to step forward and walk in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "This is not the one who the Lord has chosen." Next, Jesse summoned Shemaiah, but Samuel said, "Neither is this the one the Lord has chosen." In the same way, all 7 of Jesse's sons were presented to Samuel. But Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen any of these." Then Samuel asked, "Are these all the sons that you have?" "They're still the youngest," Jesse replied, "but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and the goats." "Send for him at once," Samuel said. "We will not sit down to eat until he arrives." So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes, and the Lord said, "This is the one, anoint him." So as David stood there among his brothers, Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought and anointed David with the oil, and the Spirit of the Lord came down powerfully upon David from that day on. Then Samuel returned to Ramah. As we talked about last week, El Roi means God sees. And God does see us. He sees past any wall, facade, front, whatever that we have to protect ourselves or to fit in. God sees past us to our true heart and intentions, however good or bad they may be. And when he tasks us to take action, when he places a pull on your heart to join a church, start a ministry, change careers, follow this path, contact this person, that kind of thing, whatever it is so easy to be scared. But we can have confidence, because if God is calling us to action, he's not saying, "Hey, you over there, you serve me, you're part of my family, go do this because I say so." No, he knows exactly your strong suits, your weak points, your willingness to follow him, your adaptability, everything you've been through, and he has chosen you, even in the small things. Because again, you might think, like, for example, if you're at a church and someone hasn't been to church in a while and you're thinking about them, but you're like, well, it's not really my job to call people. That's like the pastors and like a leadership type thing. If God has laid someone on your heart to get a hold of, even if you're not a pastor, minister, evangelist, that person might not be going to church because they're going through something, and it's something that you can understand and you would have the ability to be compassionate for, and you would have the ears to listen and to hear. We can have confidence. And this message has been such a struggle to study when God placed it on my heart, because confidence is something I've struggled with my entire life. So none of this I'm saying, I know firsthand, this does not come easy to a lot of people. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm just saying that we have the ability to have confidence, to know that if God is calling us to action, we can rise to the challenge, because God will give us strength. Even if it's something that we're weak in. And I know I've shared this story before, but God is bringing it to mind again. I will never forget being at a ladies' I think it was a ladies' luncheon, and someone shared a testimony about how they were part of the worship team and they loved to sing, and it was that way their whole life, and God led them to worship. And then one time during a message, when there was an altar call, she felt the pull of the Lord to pray over a specific woman who was up front. And she sat in her seat and fought with God, because she said, "I'm not really good at praying. Like, my prayer life with you is already, like, not that great. That's not my strong suit. Telling God, I can't do what you ask of me, even though, you know, you created me. And I'm not talking down about this woman at all whatsoever, because we've all been there. When something's been impressed upon our heart, or maybe we've had, you know, a random thought, whether we realize it was God or not, we're like, whoa, I can't do that. That's outside of my wheelhouse. God did not give that gift to me. And then she said, as she was arguing with God that she did not have the gift to pray, she watched someone else get up and pray over that woman. And it was in that moment that she realized she missed a blessing from God. That God would not have called her to do it if he would not have helped her through it. And also it made her realize that when we don't do the things that God asks us to do, he'll just go and ask somebody else, and someone will receive the blessing that God had intended for us. It says in the word that the very rocks and trees will cry out if we don't. God's word will get out there. It never falls null and void. And it's easy to even use as an excuse not to do something. It's like, if God, you know, doesn't use me because I don't feel like doing it, I don't want to get involved, I'm too scared, he'll use somebody else. Yes, that's true, but we are holding ourselves back from what God wants to give us. And it might not, when people think blessings, they think, you know, I feel like finances, or like almost like it's a reward system. But a lot of times the blessings are realizing that we are stronger than we have given ourselves credit for. It's realizing how much we can rely on God and seeing the power of God firsthand. We can have confidence. I mean, this biblical history about David, if you were the youngest son, you weren't even thought of to get, you know, the bigger part of the inheritance. You weren't thought of, you know, you weren't important. But God knew David's heart. God knew that David would be the leader that was needed. And I also, because God doesn't make mistakes, I know that it was not a mistake that this newly anointed king was not just, you know, the youngest and considered unimportant, much like Jesus was, given how he was born out of wedlock and in a manger. But David was a shepherd, and the Lord is our shepherd. And from David's line came Jesus. David was given a great blessing when he was anointed. He was basically told by God that you were meant for more. No matter what tradition speaks, no matter how your brothers treat you or society, you were meant for more. We see in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 22 to 29, this is when, David's still anointed, but he's still working as a shepherd at home while his brothers are off to war. And it says, David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out from the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt to the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in fright. "Have you seen the giant?" the men asked. "He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give that man one of his daughters for a wife, and the man's entire family will be exempt from paying taxes." David asked the soldiers standing nearby, "What will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending this defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God?" And these men gave David the same reply. They said, "Yes, that is the reward for killing him." But when David's oldest brother Eliab heard David talking to the men, he was angry. "What are you doing around here anyway?" he demanded. "What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle." "What have I done now?" David replied. "I was only asking a question." And now anyone who has ever had siblings understands this kind of back and forth.
Yep.
There was a lot of jealousy. I mean, think about it. Especially back then, the oldest males, they got everything. And then here they see the Lord, the living God, pass them over for their baby brother who is always with the sheep. It's frustrating. And then I'm sure they thought, hey, he has to stay and be a shepherd. We get to go off to war and be heroes. But there was no heroes at the war once Goliath came on the scene, because they saw how huge he was and forgot who they served, forgot God's promises, lost all confidence. Meanwhile, here comes David, who, while the Israelite army has dealt with Goliath and ran away from him for quite a bit of time now, David had no clue that this guy even existed. Sees how big he is, hears his taunts, and gets really frustrated as to why he's still alive. Why is he still allowed to live? Like, who does he think he is? Why is everyone running away? Why isn't anyone doing anything about this? Okay, there's a reward. Like, no one's tried, no one's gone up. And then to hear that his brothers assumed pride and deceit. Why? Because he had to have pride, knowing that he was the one that was picked. Whether he actually had arrogant pride or not, we don't know. But again, anyone with siblings will know that his brothers definitely assumed that he did. And also assumed of deceit, because how else could baby bro be the one that was selected?
And anyone with siblings knows what it's like to be like, to have them make that assumption and be like, dude, I'm only asking a question. I just don't get it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, sometimes we are a lot like David's brothers in the Israelite army right here. We forget how strong God made us. We forget what God has done for us in the past. We forget what God has done for others and the things that, people have gotten out of. I mean, the sick and twisted things that have happened in this world. I mean, I get put in my place all the time, because there are definitely times where, I start thinking, man, I'm frustrated with all these different situations. All these things are happening. Everything seems like it's crashing down around me. And then here comes a new documentary, and, there's one that's coming out called The Girl in the Box, where this girl was kidnapped, and for 7 years, she was put in a coffin-sized box underneath this couple's bed, and they only took her out, I think, 1 or 2 days a week for 7 years. And the thing, how this connects, is because when I was reading the description, after the documentary, there's going to be another, like an interview afterwards with her, because she survived, and how faith healed her broken mind, because there was a lot of brainwashing, healed her body and helped her to move forward. And I read things like that happen and think, I have it a lot easier. And it's not to say that those problems don't go away, because they do, but it brings back into focus, if God can help that woman heal after 7 years of torture and brainwash, God can help me through any financial problems or physical ailments or whatever comes my way. And it's important to keep those things in mind, and that is the big reason. It wasn't pride and in an arrogant kind of way that David was saying the things that he was when seeing Goliath. It was because he had confidence in the Lord. And not because he was chosen either. It says in 1 Samuel 17, verses 32 to 36, "Don't worry about this Philistine," David told Saul. "I'll go fight him." "Don't be ridiculous," Saul replied. "There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth." But David persisted. "I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God." Everyone kind of looks down on shepherds back then, but that always struck me like he was regularly going after and killing lions and bears that threatened the sheep. No gun. Small boy, not even a man yet.
With a stick.
With a stick. And God helped him to have the strength to do that. He saw what was going on, felt the leading of the Lord. It's like, well, if no one else is going to do it, I got this, because I know it's not me that actually has this. It's God through me. If no one else is going to be willing to face him, knowing that he's definitely going to be destroyed because God's favor is with Israel and not the Philistines, then I will do it. It is so easy to forget the things that God has done through us, the things he's gotten us through when we face troubles and betrayals, sadness, anger, things, because again, no matter how well you plan your life, no matter how much money you save up or make, how much education you have, how careful you are, we live in an imperfect world, and things are still going to happen that are beyond your control that will absolutely rock your world and break it if your foundation is not on the rock on which you can stand. The American painter John Sargent once painted a panel of roses that was highly praised by critics. It was a small picture, but it approached perfection. Although offered a high price for it on many occasions, Sargent refused to sell it. He considered it his best work, and he was very proud of it. Whenever he was deeply discouraged and doubtful of his abilities as an artist, he would look at it and remind himself, "I painted that." Then his confidence and ability would come back to him. Psalms 143, 3-5 says, "My enemy has chased me. He has knocked me to the ground and forces me to live in darkness like those in the grave. I am losing all hope. I am paralyzed with fear. I remember the days of old. I ponder all your great works and think about what you have done." And now, back in the first passages we read in 1 Samuel, it talks about let me get it specifically. Lord help me. I lost it. But basically, the Lord is always at work. Confidence is difficult to have. Speaking as one who has struggled with extremely low confidence and self-esteem pretty much my entire life, Having any sort of confidence can feel like arrogance when you're used to being the opposite. Or if you've been beaten down so badly by people or the storms of life, that confidence can even feel dangerous, because if you have confidence, of course, that's when all the bad things are going to happen and then just come wreck it again. So why risk it? Because even when things are bad, we can still have confidence. Romans 8:28, God works all things together for the good of those who love him. All things. All, as my dad used to say, all means all. That's all means. That means all. Good, bad, fair to middling. He works it all for our good. We can have confidence. And as someone who, again, my family has a reputation of being Job. We've had a lot of bad and a lot of tragedies, one right after the other, for years on end. And I am very happy to report that there's been a huge breakthrough, at least with me, because that's the only person I can speak on, as a breakthrough that I have been steadily praying for at least a decade. And there has been fear. And as I was studying for this, when God said, I want you to have a message on confidence. Confidence is hard. And it's not just the things that happen to us and what we've been through. It's not just our finances and things like that. It's what people have done to us. It's easy to just become a hermit, to close yourself off to people, because the majority have just shown you not just unkindness, but cruelty. And people will look out for themselves before you, even if it hurts you. It's very hard to go about with confidence and interacting with people. God never said that things would be easy. God never said that things wouldn't be difficult, but he said that we could have confidence. We need to be like that painter John Sargent, to reassure ourselves like he did. But instead of looking, at his painting, we look at our lives. Think about a time where you were just utterly depressed or anxious or bogged down, when there was something that you're like, this mountain's too big. There's no way I'm getting around it. It's just going to be this way forever. It won't. It just feels like that. But it's not always going to be like this. But the thing is, it's not always going to end up like how we picture either. Confidence in the Lord is blind faith a lot of times, and saying, you know what? This is awful, what I'm facing. I have no idea, see no way around it. But you promise that you're working things together for me. I'll do what's within my power, and then just keep moving forward the best I can. And kind of just, when God opens doors and windows of opportunity that we never thought of, that they're the opposite of what we've always had in mind, or just nothing we ever thought about before, have the confidence to walk through the door, to climb out the window. Because these things sometimes that we hold on to are what's hurting our confidence, is what's hurting our relationship with the Lord, and making us forget who he is and who we are in him. It is okay to have confidence in the Lord. There is nothing or no one else that you could put your confidence in that will have your back 100% of the time.